I know you're bored. It's cold. You want something to do. This is it. Do not scroll past. You're going to want to hear about this event. If you've been before, I know you're coming again. And if you haven't, well, here you go. With me, I have Chachi Loprete, Stephanie Loprete, and John Logan. Chachi Loprete is a Beatles fanstorian, a big fan and a historian. And Stephanie Loprete is the executive producer of The Big Shoe. And John Duke Logan, the world's only Beatles magician. You're going to see how this all stitches together in a moment. There's a show coming up called Come Together, celebrating the Fab Four. Can't say Fabulous Four. Fab Four's appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show. And I just think it's a blast looking at the Ed Sullivan Show to see all those bands. But, you know, the Beatles, the big deal. There's a lot of history behind that and behind Ed Sullivan. There's a lot you don't know, and there's a lot to find out. But in addition to that, prizes, that alone is enough reason to come down to City Winery Sunday at noon. And good food and good drinks and good times and Beatles magic and rare footage and live. I believe there's a live performance. So now these guys are going to fill it all out. I've done a bunch of these, and I think this might be the first one we did on an Ed Sullivan Show, right?
No, we did it last February as well.
Okay. All right. Well, here we are again. Tell us about it. Who wants to go first? I don't want to choose, 1, 2, 3, go. Stephanie, tell us about it.
I was first last time. Yes, this is the Beatles celebrating their appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show, the start of Beatlemania and all their appearances. And we also have very special guest, Sal Baglio.
Oh, good.
Rocking set with Seth and Steve from the Stompers and the Savages, and they are going to rock the house with some great heavy Beatles music.
So there's going to be two people?
Yeah, three.
Three performers.
Three.
Yes. Steve from the Stompers and Seth Pappas from the Savages.
Okay, so that's tremendous because Sal all by himself is wonderful. Always very impressive, but when he is with other people, it's 3 times as good. It's really fantastic.
That's right. Drummer, bass.
They rock heavy. They rock real heavy. And we may have a special appearance by Barrence Whitfield, too. He might be joining it.
What are the odds? 50%?
Still, we're waiting to find out.
Higher than that.
He's expressed interest in doing it, and in the past.
No, but he's just working out the detail. We have almost final confirmation. So.
Hey, Barrett, can you hear me? We love you. You need to show up at the event.
Yes.
All right.
Yes,
good.
we do.
Barrett Whitfield, man, he's a performer. He just doesn't stop.
He's the greatest. He's appeared on one of our shows before.
John, tell me why this is a big deal, the Ed Sullivan appearances.
Well, the Ed Sullivan Show, from my perspective, was the takeoff for Beatlemania, right? February 9th, 1964, they come to America. They're on the Ed Sullivan Show, and the fans go crazy. 73 million people tuned in. At that point, from what I think, that's the most of all time at that time.
73 million people?
Yeah.
So I think America only had like a couple 100 million at the time. I mean,
there you go. That's how many people tuned in.
Because it's like, I don't know, like 385 now. Back then, there were a lot fewer people.
Yeah.
So that's like 1 out of every 3 Americans of every age, man, woman, and child.
Well, it was a joke that there was no crime committed in America at that point because everyone was watching the Ed Sullivan Show, even the criminals. So that's kind of the funny joke that people say. But yeah, this was kind of the start of the Beatles touring the world, Beatlemania, Ed Sullivan Show. So we have a really jam-packed show. The Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show multiple times, and we're going to cover each time and why each time was unique as well. So it's going to be really, really fun.
Again, this show that these folks are doing called Come Together, and this episode of it, celebrating the appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show, is Sunday the 12th. Let me check. Yeah. Sunday the 12th, right?
Yeah, I have it in my little.
Okay, January 12th. I didn't want to get my numbers wrong. And the show starts at 12, but you can get there at 11. A lot of people get there at 11. I get there at 10:30, man. I want to hang out with everybody. It's a good idea to get there at 11 if you can, but if you can only get there at noon, that's cool too. Either way. And it's also cool to get tickets in advance, right? How do people get the tickets in advance?
You go to citywinery.com/Boston, or on your screen, you'll see below John, togetherproductions.com. Get tickets either way there.
Oh, cool.
You save a few Beatle bucks if you get it in advance. You can certainly buy tickets at the door, but we prefer you do it in advance. And one of the great things, Bradley, is the menu at City Winery has really, they up their game. They've some great breakfast food, brunch items, lunch items, and of course their beverage menu. So the food's great. You get to eat and drink and while you're watching the show, and it's really a beautiful venue. City Winery in Boston, just a block or two away from the Boston Garden, heading towards the North End.
Block or two, just a block or two away. Okay, and Chachi, give me some backstory on how the whole thing happened. Was it touch and go? Was there drama behind the scenes on maybe the first one or any of them?
Well, this month back in '64, I'm a first generation Beatle fan. I watched them on the Ed Sullivan Show with my older brothers and older sister. And this month, I remember as a young kid that my sister and brothers were just freaking out, and everyone at school, because everyone was anticipating the arrival of the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show in February, as John said. And their record, I Want to Hold Your Hand, hit number one. Everyone was just freaking out at the arrival of the Beatles. And so they arrived in New York on February 7th. They performed on the 9th. After that, they took a train trip to Washington and played the Coliseum. It was a major snowstorm. They were supposed to fly, but they took a train. All of it's recorded on film, part of the new Beatles 64 movie on Disney Plus. It was just an electrifying time. I remember watching Ed Sullivan. Everyone watched Ed Sullivan back then. Every Sunday night, it was a family thing all over the country. And as John said, 73 million people watched. Crime went down drastically during that time. And just a week later, they performed again on Sullivan, and they performed a third time on Ed Sullivan in February. So they just blanketed the country in the media, print, magazines, radio, and of course television. Ed Sullivan, we loved old Stoneface. I watched him every week. He was the greatest MC. And you got to understand, back in January of '64, we were subject to our parents' favorite music. And The Singing Nun with Dominique was the number one album at the time. And getting the Beatles to America was like a breath of fresh air, and it changed the lives of millions of kids, myself included.
It must have been a shocker, electric, because it's true. Back then, the music was Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, and
Bobby Vinton,
and Al Hurt playing his trumpet.
Mitch Murray, Mitch Miller, whatever his
Mitch Miller.
Mitch Miller, yes, Mitch Miller.
And of course Lawrence Welk.
Oh yes, wonderful.
Don't forget Lawrence Welk. So there was never any drama. I mean, there was drama with the Stones. What about who was the intermediary? Who was the manager, the person who set this all up with the Ed Sullivan bigwigs? Who did the talking?
Brian Epstein, the Beatles manager. Ed Sullivan had been at Heathrow, and there were thousands of kids at the airport at the time. He thought the Queen was there until someone told him, no, it's a British band called the Beatles. He took note of it, and Brian Epstein and Ed Sullivan, talked about it. Now, you got to understand, too, that Elvis Presley played previously, and he charged Ed Sullivan $50,000 for one appearance. Brian Epstein, seeing it as a big marketing opportunity, made a deal with the Ed Sullivan Show. For $10,000, they would be on the show 3 times.
Wow.
And again, Brian wasn't looking for the money. He knew the money would come once he was on the biggest stage in America, which was the Ed Sullivan Show.
It's interesting to kind of compare Colonel Tom Parker and Brian Epstein and the way they were. They were completely different, right? Tom Parker was like destroyed Elvis.
Colonel Tom Parker was a fraud. He frauded Elvis out of so much money. He took 50%. Certainly Brian didn't do that. He took 50% of everything. And then, you know, he did what Elvis didn't want to do. He made him do those terrible films, which his stock, you know, Clam Bake, Girls, 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 Fun in Acapulco. I mean, just
Sing Rockahula.
Sing Rock.
Viva Las Vegas.
Viva Las Vegas. Yeah, and Elvis in all these predicaments, and certainly girls, you know, trying to win his love. So, yeah, Elvis, unfortunately, and then he went in the army too, and that kind of hurt his career when he got back. He never quite gained his footing after that.
So Tom Parker had some sort of weird hold over Elvis. Elvis had to know that no other manager was getting 50%.
Don't know the ins and outs there, but I agree with that. Maybe he felt he owed the Colonel the 50% for discovering.
So the point is, what was the Brian Epstein? What was his deal with the Beatles?
Brian Epstein was the son in a family that was well-to-do. They had a giant furniture store, and they had a little record store within there.
A giant furniture store? Who uses giant furniture?
No, not a sizable furniture store in Liverpool. Yes, thank you. A misplaced modifier. And so he was put in charge of NEMS, the record store part of the family business. And so he had a lot of power because he moved a lot of records. And so a gentleman by the name of Raymond Jones came into the store one day and said, "Hey, I heard of a band called the Beatles have a new record out." And so Brian went and searched for it, found them out, realized that they were playing just down the street at the Cavern Club, and the signage was direct from Germany. So he thought the Beatles were German, but they had just played in Germany. So he was happy to find out that they were indeed from Liverpool. Even more blown away when he saw they had charisma, great looks, and when Paul announced, "We're going to play a song that we wrote," a red light went off for Brian, because no one back in those days wrote their own music. And he said, you know, that song's a good song. These guys have talent. Went backstage, started a friendship, worked out a deal. And then he connected with Ed Sullivan. And Brian said, "We're not going to America until we have a #1 record in America." And in December and January of 1964 and 63 and 64 respectively, they became #1 in America. And that opened the doors to bring the Beatles to America, and it changed everything.
And it was also Brian's idea because we first saw them in leather jackets, and it was his idea. At least that's what I know. Chachi, you can correct me if I'm wrong. He suggested that the Beatles wear suit jackets instead. So they put on the suit jackets, and they went on the Ed Sullivan Show, and everything changed. So Brian Epstein really helped them make a lot of critical business decisions that helped them in the long run. Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to understand too, that when they played in Germany, it wasn't like an hour and a half set. They played for 8 hours at a time. And so the German audience would be fighting in the audience. There'd be fights, and the Beatles will continue playing. The Beatles drank on stage. They argued with the audience. They yelled at the audience. The audience loved them. And at one time, John's on stage with a toilet seat around his neck performing. And so Brian saw them as, you know, we have to make you ready for public consumption, and put them in suits and the boots and the look and the hair, and clean them up. No more swearing on stage. Bow at the end of the song. And that's what.
Here's a question before we get back to the show. I mean, the show that you're doing on Sunday. Here's a question. Do you think the Beatles' talent was so giant that they would have become massive even without Brian? Or would they have, without Brian, they would have just gone nowhere or not that far?
Well, and that question's been asked for years and years. What would have happened? Because they were turned down by every record company that Brian went to until they found George Martin. They had previous managers. But no, Brian had a special, affinity for the Beatles. He loved them. And I don't think it would have been the same. If Decca signed them, who knows what it might have turned out to be like, because it was all about the manager. Brian put them first, sacrificed a lot for them. And he loved them as friends, brothers, a band, and so who knows? But Brian was the guy. He told everybody back then they would be bigger than Elvis Presley, and everyone looked at him and said, "You're crazy." So Brian was the only one that really believed in them.
Wow. All right. So back to the show. It's Sunday the 12th. It starts at 12. You get there at 11 if you want. It's nice to get in there and get something to eat, but you, of course, can order food and drink during the show. That's important to know. So a lot goes on if you haven't seen it. I come whipping out as your MC, introduce the hosts. That's Chachi and John, and everything begins. And there will be prizes, and Chachi may have the prizes here to tell you what they're going to you can maybe even show us. I don't know. Is that possible?
We don't have the prizes in-house, but I will tell you this. Every show we've done so far at the City Winery, we have albums provided to us by the generous Bob Walsh, who owns the Cheap Thrills Music and More record store in Dedham. It's a great place to find some rare albums. So he gives us vintage albums to give away, real albums. We've given away records that, are valued at over $100. And every month he gives us vinyl to give away, and we will do so again this Sunday. Play trivia, there's drawings, there's films, pictures, stories, and of course Sal, Seth, and Steve performing. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, the lovely Stephanie, executive producer, runs the show. She created this whole thing, and so we owe it all to Steph with her John Lennon cap.
I know. I see the John Lennon cap, and I love it. And I know it doesn't have a great backstory, but you need to make one up. You need to you need to get a real good story with that, and nobody will be the wiser. And let's talk about the magic. We haven't really touched upon the magic.
So
John Logan, go ahead.
So you learn about the Beatles through the magic. So for example, we mentioned a moment ago how Brian Epstein came in and helped the Beatles make certain decisions. He really understood each of their personalities, so he was really good at influencing them in a good way to make the right decision. So one trick I'll be doing on Sunday is going to be based around that. Could I read someone's personality just like Brian Epstein did and influence their decision just like Brian Epstein influenced the Beatles' decision? So that's going to be one thing. Another thing is when to take people's favorite Beatles songs and do something with all of their favorite Beatles songs as well. There's going to be a little bit of mind reading as well. That's right. With Beatles as well. So
John can read minds. John,
I'll leave it up to the audience.
It's scary. And when I'm around John, I don't know if you can read minds over the internet or you have to be in person, but I try to clear my brain of any thoughts that I want to be really private. I just can't think about them. I think about something else. By the way, John, I was thinking about this. John Logan has a colleague, another magician, Jonathan Vail, who can also read minds.
Yep.
And I wonder, when you guys are together, do you read his mind, reading your mind?
We don't even talk
to each other.
And they get this big weird feedback loop.
We don't even talk to each other. We just know what each other. We just communicate. So we sit in a room silently, and we know what we're thinking.
So if you drove across the country, it would be really quiet in the car.
Exactly, yeah, we just talk through our minds. No, Jonathan Vail is one of the most talented, hardworking magicians I know out there. He helps me a lot with the show, the magic component of the show. Just an unbelievable talent, Jonathan Vail. So yeah, a huge shout out to him. He's one of our producers as well. Yep.
Jonathan, does he have a show coming up that you know of? Might as well plug it if he does.
He has a few shows coming up. The dates are being confirmed, but once I know, I will let you know because he is a super, super talent.
Okay, what am I forgetting? The date, the time, the date is the 12th. Coming right up. Get your tickets in advance. You can get them at City Winery /Boston or cometogetherproductions.com. Mm-hmm. Getting them in advance is kind of cool. And you know why it's cool? It helps them plan so they have enough wait staff there, for one thing.
That's true. And I will tell you, I'm not a breakfast sandwich guy. In fact, I really never eat breakfast sandwiches. The last show, I said, I'm going to try their breakfast sandwich, and it was the best thing. And I'm looking forward to that on Sunday. And then the last band we had was While My Guitar Gently Weeps. And the drummer, Matt, had the smash burger, and he turns to me after he ate it, and he says, "That was the best burger I've ever had." And I'm like, it's great.
As an aside, what is a smash burger? I see that word everywhere, even in foreign countries. What is a smash burger? Anybody know? John?
When I get burgers, Chachi and I are very. Now, people say we're picky eaters. I like to use the word consistent eaters. But we know what we like and we like what we know. So we only get. I get a cheeseburger with no toppings, and Chachi just gets just the burger and the bacon. So
and yes, in a bun. I do like bacon, but I put it on the side. I eat it for dessert. But I will tell you this: I think it's because there's a ton of stuff in with the burger, right, Boo? You got the lettuce, you got all kinds of things, so it's big. Do they smash it all together? Is that?
Well, I looked it up.
I think it's the way. Listen, vegetarian here.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's because the way they smash it on the grill, like they, how sometimes they put the whatever it is and they smash it down and it cooks like a certain way, as opposed to like grilling it.
I guess you're right. I have looked it up. A smash burger is a burger made by pressing a ball of ground beef into a hot griddle with a spatula to create a thin patty. The smashing technique creates a crispy crust on the outside while keeping the inside juicy. I'm glad to know that.
Starts like a meatball, and then they flatten it out on.
I guess so. I thought it was kind of like a sloppy Joe, like where you just a big mess.
Yeah. No, but Matt from Guitar Gently Weeps thought it was the best burger he ever had. So, listen, the food's good. The
music's good. Prizes are good. The
prize is good, and you know what? The audience is great. Everyone's a Beatle fan. It's like you're with friends. It's like you're in John's living room, and we're all hanging out, talking about our favorite band. People talk to each other. They're very kind to each other, and it's unlike any other experience. When you go to a concert, you're there with your friend, whoever you're with, and you watch the show and you leave. But when you're at our Come Together show, it really is a community of Beatledom. And
yep, it really is. And again, let's face it, you're looking for something to do. It's a different thing. You're tired of, if you're an adult, especially, you're tired of doing the same old thing that you've done a thousand times before. This is something different. And Sunday parking is better, right? Right.
Parking and traffic. There's no traffic on Sunday mornings, no matter where you are around Boston. If you're over the Tobin Bridge, down 93, down Route 324, no matter where you're coming from, that's the joy. Because we used to do the show at night, and man, getting through the traffic, but we're on the road a nice Sunday morning, and you're enjoying your coffee, have a casual ride into town. Meters are free, lots of places to park, and it's a whole different.
Right. Really, and if you don't go, you're going to be missing out. You're going to be missing out on a new experience. You're just going to be wasting another day of your life sitting around doing the same old thing, watching the same stupid TV. So get a grip and get out there and take control of your life and live life a little bit and come see us all. All right.
And the live music is going to be amazing. Like sound just rocks so heavy. And
we know
players are great. Yeah. It's going to be an amazing set.
Listen, Sal Baglio from the Stompers to back in the day to the amplifier heads today, he is still performing. His voice is still as great as it ever was since back in the day. Loves the Beatles. He does his own music as well. But at our show, he performs the Beatles. He loves it, and he brings great performers with him as he's doing on Sunday. So the place is going to rock.
Steve Gillian on guitar, Gilligan on guitar, and Seth Pappas on drums. It's going to be awesome.
Yes, we're looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, thanks a lot. It's always a pleasure. It's fun. I get to hang around with you twice a month, once at the gig and once right here doing this. So everybody, if you know a Beatles fan, share this. Share it to your big groups. Do it. You know what to do. Help us out. And
Steve Bradley J.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? Everyone in the audience, we love talking to everybody. Bradley, John, me, Steph. We hang out in the lobby after the show, and people want to say hello, and we love saying hi to everyone, thanking them for the support, and sharing Beatles stories. And everyone has their own Beatles story.
By the way, there is merchandise, cool merchandise. John makes art now, right? It's Beatles related art, right?
Yeah, it's this cool kind of abstract art that has to do with the Beatles song. So I have different types of art where you can, there's some of them that's Here Comes the Sun, Come Together, but it's kind of this abstract art. And also there's some of them that has every single Beatles song on a piece as well. So 5x7 and 11x17 frames art pieces.
And their t-shirts, you can get the t-shirt just like the one Stephanie's wearing there.
Mhm.
The come together t-shirt. It's got something on the back too. Is that a long sleeve? It's a long sleeve, which is good for this
Look,
weather.
it's got come together on the back. Yep.
Yeah.
And
All right.
and Bradley J has t-shirts too.
Yes, he does. I'll bring a couple. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. I'll see you on Sunday. I'll get there early and hang out. And we'll see all of you. Don't waste a day. We'll see you there. All right. Bye now. We'll be on live.